My love, before you make your decision, I'm asking you for just one thing. Please hear me. Not because I want to control what you choose, not because I want to pressure you into staying, and certainly not because I believe I'm entitled to an answer that I want. I'm asking because there are some things in life that deserve to be understood completely before they are judged, and what I'm about to tell you is one of them. I know you may already have a picture in your mind. Maybe you've looked at my actions, my silence, my mistakes, the moments when I didn't say what I should have said, and you've reached a conclusion, and maybe I gave you reasons to question me. I understand that. I'm not standing here pretending I have handled everything perfectly. I haven't. But before you close the door completely, I need you to hear what was happening behind the silence. Because silence doesn't always mean a lack of feeling. Sometimes silence means there are too many feelings to put into words. There were moments when I wanted to tell you everything, but I stopped myself. I thought about what would happen if I said too much. What if you misunderstood me? What if you didn't feel the same way? What if telling you the truth changed the relationship forever? Sometimes fear doesn't look like running away. Sometimes fear looks like standing in the same place, holding something important inside, hoping the right moment will eventually come, and maybe that moment is now. I don't expect one conversation to erase every doubt you've ever had. I don't expect you to suddenly forget every disappointment or pretend that everything has been perfect. That's not how real relationships work. Real love has complicated moments. People misunderstand each other. People make mistakes. People become afraid. And sometimes, two people who genuinely care about each other can still hurt each other simply because they don't know how to communicate what is happening inside their hearts. But I don't want you to make a permanent decision based on an incomplete story. That's all I'm asking. Listen to everything before you decide what it means. Listen not only to the words I'm saying, but to the reason I'm finally saying them. I'm not here to create some dramatic moment. I'm here because I have reached a point where keeping everything inside feels more painful than facing the truth. You deserve honesty from me. And honesty means admitting that you've affected me in ways I never expected. It means admitting that I care about what happens to you. It means admitting that when I imagine the future, there are moments when I see you in it. It means admitting that this isn't something I can simply dismiss because it became inconvenient or complicated. But I also want you to understand something important. Loving someone doesn't mean taking away their freedom. If your heart tells you that you need to walk away, I will respect that. If you need time, I will respect that too. If you need answers, I'll give them to you. I don't want a decision made because you felt pressured. I want a decision made because you finally understood the truth. Because if there is one thing I have learned, it's that the biggest decisions in life shouldn't be made from fear. They should be made from understanding. So, before you decide that this is over, before you decide that my silence meant I didn't care, before you decide that my mistakes were the whole story, give me a few moments to tell you what I've been carrying inside. You may still choose differently afterward, and if you do, I will accept it. But at least then, you'll be deciding with the whole truth in front of you, and I'll know that I didn't lose you, because I was too afraid to finally tell you how deeply you mattered to me. So before you close the door on us, hear the truth from my heart, because sometimes one honest conversation can change everything. There is something I have been afraid to tell you, and honestly, saying those words out loud is harder than I ever imagined. Not because I don't know what I feel, but because I know what those feelings could change. Once you tell someone the truth that you've been protecting inside your heart, you can't take it back. The moment those words leave you, they become real in a way that silence never allows. For a long time, I convinced myself that staying quiet was safer. I told myself that maybe the timing wasn't right. Maybe I should wait. Maybe eventually the circumstances would become easier. Maybe I could find the perfect words that would somehow guarantee the perfect response. But life doesn't work that way. There is rarely a perfect moment to tell someone what matters most. There is only the moment when you finally realize that continuing to remain silent is costing you more than the risk of being honest. And that's where I am now. I've been afraid that if I told you everything, you might look at me differently. I was afraid that you might misunderstand what I'm trying to say. I was afraid that something beautiful between us could become uncomfortable simply because I finally admitted how deeply I feel. But beneath all those fears was one truth I couldn't escape. You matter to me. More than I have allowed myself to say. Sometimes we think courage means being fearless. It doesn't. Courage is feeling the fear and deciding that the truth is still worth speaking. I've had plenty of reasons to stay quiet, but none of them were stronger than the reason I have to be honest with you now. I don't want to give you a perfect version of myself. I want to give you the real one. The person who has made mistakes. The person who has overthought conversations. The person who sometimes didn't know what to say when the right words were needed. The person who has tried to protect his heart and, in doing so, may have accidentally created distance between us. I know that may have confused you. Maybe there were moments when you wondered whether I cared. Maybe my silence looked like indifference. Maybe my hesitation looked like uncertainty. But the truth is almost the opposite. Sometimes I was quiet because I cared so much that I didn't know how to express it without exposing everything I was trying to protect. And I'm tired of hiding behind that fear. I don't want to spend another day wondering what could have happened if I had simply been honest. I don't want to reach some distant point in the future and realize that I lost something meaningful because I was too afraid to speak. There are opportunities in life that come once. There are conversations that cannot be postponed forever. And there are people who enter your life and make you realize that staying exactly the same is no longer an option. You are one of those people for me. You changed the way I think about love. You changed the way I think about the future. You made me understand that sometimes the strongest feeling isn't excitement. Sometimes it's the quiet certainty that you genuinely care about someone's happiness, even when there is nothing you can gain from it. That's what scares me most, because when you truly care about someone, you become vulnerable to their decision. You can build businesses, solve problems, take risks, and face uncertainty. But when it comes to matters of the heart, there is no equation that guarantees the outcome. You can give your best, speak honestly, and still have to accept that another person has their own heart, their own fears, and their own choice. And I accept that. I'm not telling you this because I expect you to give me exactly what I want. I'm telling you because you deserve to know the truth. You deserve to know what has been behind my silence, behind my hesitation, behind every moment when I couldn't quite find the words. The truth is simple. I care about you deeply. I see something in you that I don't want to pretend doesn't exist. And whatever happens after this conversation, I would rather face reality with an honest heart than live comfortably inside a beautiful lie. So this is me finally choosing courage over fear, honesty over silence, and truth over uncertainty. I was afraid to tell you because you matter so much, but I'm even more afraid of losing you without ever letting you know the truth. And there is something else you need to understand. You changed something inside me without even knowing it. You probably never realized the effect you were having on me. Maybe to you, some of those moments were ordinary. A conversation, a smile, a simple message, a few minutes spent together, or even a moment when you were there without trying to be anything special. But somehow, those ordinary moments became extraordinary to me. You didn't walk into my life with a plan to change me. You didn't tell me that I needed to become different. You didn't demand that I see the world differently. You simply showed up as yourself, and somehow that was enough to make me question parts of myself I had accepted for years. Before you, I thought I understood what it meant to care about someone. I thought love was mostly about feelings, attraction, excitement, and wanting someone close. But knowing you made me realize that love can be much deeper than that. Sometimes love is simply wanting someone to be happy, even when you don't know what the future will look like. Sometimes it's becoming more patient because someone matters to you. Sometimes it's looking at your own flaws and deciding that you don't want them to hurt someone you genuinely care about. You made me want to become better. Not because you told me I wasn't enough, but because your presence made me see possibilities in myself that I had ignored. That's a powerful thing. The right person doesn't always change your life by giving you something. Sometimes they change it by helping you discover something that was already inside you. You made me think differently about my future. You made me think beyond achievements, plans, goals, and everything that can be measured. You made me realize that building a meaningful life isn't only about what you accomplish. It's also about who you become while you're building it and who you choose to share that life with. And I don't think you ever understood how much that affected me. There were moments when I found myself thinking about what kind of person I wanted to be around you. More honest, more patient, more present, more willing to communicate instead of disappearing into silence. I started realizing that if I wanted something real, I couldn't continue hiding behind fear. You didn't force that realization. You inspired it. And maybe that's why this feels so difficult to explain. Because you didn't do one enormous thing that I can point to and say, that's the moment everything changed. It was smaller than that. It was 1,000 little moments that slowly became something enormous. It was the way you made certain days feel lighter. It was the way your presence could make an ordinary conversation feel important. It was the way I began imagining possibilities I hadn't allowed myself to imagine before. And somewhere along the way, I realized that I wasn't simply thinking about you anymore. I was becoming different because of you. But I want you to understand something. I don't blame you for that change. I don't put the responsibility for my happiness on your shoulders. My growth is mine to own. You simply became the person who helped me see that growth was possible. That's what makes your place in my life so meaningful. You didn't come along and complete me as though I was incomplete before you. You challenged me to become more complete within myself. You made me want to build a life that I could be proud of, whether you were standing beside me or not. And that is how I know this feeling is deeper than a temporary emotion. Because real love shouldn't make you smaller. It should make you braver. It should make you more honest. It should make you want to build, improve, understand, and give. That's what you awakened in me. Maybe you never knew. Maybe you never noticed. Maybe you thought you were simply being yourself. But that's exactly the point. You didn't have to try to change me. You changed something inside me simply by being someone I couldn't ignore. Someone whose presence made me look at my own life differently. And if you ever wondered whether you truly mattered to me, I hope you understand now. You didn't just become part of my story. You became the reason I started writing a better chapter of it. And now I need to tell you something I probably should have said a long time ago. The truth is, my feelings for you are deeper than I ever admitted, maybe even deeper than I was willing to admit to myself at first. I tried to make them smaller. I told myself it was just a phase, just admiration, just a connection that would eventually fade with time. I thought if I ignored it long enough, maybe it would become easier to explain away. But it didn't. If anything, it became stronger. Because what I feel for you isn't based on one perfect moment or one unforgettable conversation. It has grown quietly through all the ordinary moments, the conversations that stayed in my mind long after they ended, the things you said that I continued thinking about, the moments when I caught myself wondering whether you were okay, whether you were happy, whether life was treating you kindly. That's when I realized something. When someone becomes important to you, you don't only think about how they make you feel. You start caring about how they feel. And that's what happened to me. I started caring about your peace, your dreams, your struggles, the things you don't always say out loud. I started noticing the little things, not because I was trying to analyze you, but because you became someone whose happiness genuinely mattered to me. I didn't plan for that. I didn't decide one morning that I was going to fall this deeply. It happened slowly. And maybe that's why it took me so long to admit it. We often imagine love as something dramatic, something loud, something that arrives suddenly and changes everything overnight. But sometimes the deepest feelings don't arrive like an explosion. They arrive quietly. They become part of your thoughts, your decisions, your hopes, and eventually your vision of the future before you even realize what has happened. That's what happened with you. You became part of the future I started imagining. Not because I want to create some fantasy where everything is perfect, but because when I think about building a meaningful life, I naturally wonder what it would be like to share parts of that life with you. And that thought scares me because when you care deeply, you have something to lose. I could have kept pretending that this wasn't important. I could have continued acting like everything was simple and nothing had changed. But eventually, pretending becomes exhausting. And I don't want to pretend anymore. I want you to know that when I say I care about you, I don't mean it casually. When I say I miss you, I don't mean it because I'm bored. When I say I want you in my life, I don't mean only when things are easy. I mean, I want to know you beyond the surface. I want to understand the person you are when nobody is watching. I want to know your ambitions, your fears, the things that make you laugh, and even the things you struggle to explain. Because to me, loving someone isn't simply wanting their best moments. It's being willing to understand their complicated ones, too. And I know I'm not perfect. I know feelings alone aren't enough to build a lasting relationship. Love needs trust. It needs communication. It needs consistency. It needs two people who are willing to keep choosing each other when the excitement fades and real life begins. That's why I'm not standing here promising you some impossible, perfect future. I'm promising honesty. I'm promising that what I feel is real. And if you give me the chance, I want my actions to become the evidence behind these words. Maybe you never realized how deeply you had become part of my thoughts. Maybe you didn't know that certain songs, places, conversations, or quiet moments could suddenly remind me of you. Maybe you never knew that sometimes the smallest memory of you could completely change the direction of my day. But now you know. I can't promise that I will never make mistakes. I can't promise that everything between us will always be easy. But I can promise that I will never again pretend that you mean less to me than you actually do. Because the truth is, my feelings became too deep to hide behind silence. I may have been afraid to admit how much I love you, but I will never again be afraid to tell you that you matter to me more than words can measure. But I also want to make something very clear. I'm not asking you to believe me simply because I know how to put feelings into words. Words can be beautiful, but words alone don't build trust. Anyone can make a promise when emotions are high. Anyone can say, I love you, when everything feels intense. But real love is measured by what happens after the words are spoken. So I'm not asking you to close your eyes and take a leap of faith, just because I'm standing here telling you how I feel. I'm asking you to watch what I do. Watch how I treat you when there is nothing to gain. Watch how I respond when things don't go my way. Watch whether I listen when you speak, whether I respect your boundaries, whether I show up when life becomes difficult, and whether my actions remain consistent when the excitement of this moment is gone. Because that's where the truth lives. Not in one emotional conversation, not in a promise made at midnight, not in a beautiful sentence. The truth lives in consistency. I know that trust isn't something you can demand from another person. You can't say, trust me, and expect someone to forget everything they've experienced before. Trust has to be earned. Sometimes slowly, sometimes painfully. And if I've given you reasons to doubt me in the past, then I understand why you might hesitate now. I'm not angry at your hesitation. I respect it. In fact, if you care about protecting your heart, you should be careful about who you trust. You shouldn't believe everything simply because it sounds beautiful. You shouldn't surrender your judgment because someone says the right words. So don't believe me because I'm emotional. Don't believe me because I'm asking you to. Believe me only if my actions eventually give you a reason to. If I tell you that you matter, then I should make you feel valued. If I tell you that I respect you, then my behavior should reflect that respect even when we disagree. If I tell you that I want something real, then I should be willing to put in the work required to create something real. And if I tell you that I'm committed, then commitment should still exist on the days when things aren't easy. That's the difference between saying you love someone and learning how to love someone. One is a statement. The other is a practice. And I don't want to give you a speech that sounds incredible today and means nothing tomorrow. I want to give you something much more difficult and much more valuable. Evidence over time. I want you to see whether I become more honest instead of more distant. Whether I communicate instead of disappearing. Whether I take responsibility instead of making excuses. Whether I learn from my mistakes instead of repeating them, because I'm not trying to convince you that I'm perfect. I'm trying to show you that I'm willing to grow. And maybe that's the most honest promise I can make. I will make mistakes. You will make mistakes. There will be days when we misunderstand each other. There will be moments when emotions get complicated. That's part of being human. But what matters is what we do after those moments. Do we run or do we communicate? Do we blame or do we take responsibility? Do we give up or do we learn? That's where a relationship becomes real. So if you're standing there wondering whether my words are true, you don't have to decide today. Take your time. Observe, ask questions, pay attention to the small things. Because eventually, patterns tell the truth that promises sometimes hide. I don't need you to believe everything I say tonight. I want to earn the kind of trust where you don't have to question every word because my actions have already answered the question. That's the kind of love I want to build with you. Not something dependent on constant reassurance, but something strong enough to survive reality. So let my actions speak when my words become insufficient. Let time test everything I've said. And if my behavior doesn't match my promises, then you have every right to walk away. But if, over time, you see that I'm serious, that I'm consistent, that I'm willing to grow, and that my love isn't just something I say when I'm afraid of losing you, then perhaps you'll understand why I'm standing here telling you all of this. Don't believe me because I asked you to. Believe me when everything I do gives you no reason not to. And I know there may have been moments when I made you question my intentions. Maybe there were times when you looked at my actions and wondered what I really wanted. Maybe my silence confused you. Maybe my hesitation made you feel like I wasn't serious. Maybe there were moments when I came closer, then pulled back, and left you wondering whether I was fighting for something real, or simply fighting with myself. If I made you feel that way, I want to take responsibility for it. I don't want to make excuses for the moments when I failed to communicate. I don't want to rewrite the past and pretend I handled everything perfectly. I didn't. There were things I should have said sooner. There were conversations I should have had instead of avoiding them. There were moments when I should have been more honest about what was happening inside me. And sometimes, when we are afraid of losing someone, we make the strange mistake of becoming the very reason they start pulling away. I understand that now. Maybe you saw my uncertainty and thought it meant I didn't care. Maybe you saw my silence and interpreted it as indifference. Maybe you saw my hesitation and believed there was someone or something else that mattered more. But the truth was much more complicated. I was trying to understand my own feelings while also trying to protect myself from them. That doesn't make every decision I made right. It doesn't erase the confusion I may have caused you. But it explains something I wish I had explained much earlier. My hesitation was never a measure of your worth. You were never the problem. The problem was that I was afraid, afraid of being vulnerable, afraid of saying too much, afraid of hearing an answer I wasn't ready for, afraid that if I showed you the full depth of what I felt, I would give you the power to hurt me. And that's one of the hardest lessons I've had to learn. You cannot build genuine love while constantly protecting yourself from vulnerability. At some point, you have to take the armor off. You have to say, this is who I am. This is what I feel. This is what I want. And I understand that you have the freedom to choose what happens next. That's what I'm doing now. I'm not asking you to forget the moments that hurt you. I'm not asking you to pretend my mistakes didn't happen. And I'm certainly not asking you to trust me instantly, just because I finally found the courage to explain myself. Trust doesn't work that way. If I damaged your trust, then I have to be willing to rebuild it. And rebuilding takes time, it takes consistency, it takes patience, it takes humility. It means accepting that sometimes you may still have questions even after I've given you an answer. It means understanding that an apology isn't valuable because of how beautifully it's spoken. It's valuable when behavior changes afterward. So if you've ever wondered whether I was serious about you, don't judge me only by the moments when I was afraid. Look at what I'm willing to do now. I'm willing to have the difficult conversation. I'm willing to admit where I was wrong. I'm willing to listen instead of defending myself. I'm willing to understand your perspective, even when it makes me uncomfortable. And most importantly, I'm willing to become better. Not simply to keep you, but because knowing you has made me realize that I need to become a better version of myself. I can't change the moments that already happened. I can't go backward and say the words I should have said, but I can choose what I do from this moment forward. And maybe that's what matters most, because our past can explain us, but it doesn't have to control us. So if you question my intentions, I understand why. If you doubted my feelings, I understand why. If you wondered whether I was serious, I understand why. I don't resent you for protecting your heart. I only hope that, after hearing everything I've been too afraid to say, you'll give me the opportunity to let my actions answer the questions my past behavior created. I don't need you to erase your doubts overnight. I only want the chance to replace them with something stronger: consistency, honesty, patience, and time. I can't rewrite the moments when I made you doubt me, but I can spend every moment ahead showing you that my intentions were always deeper than my fear allowed me to reveal. And after everything I've told you, there's one more thing I need you to understand. What I want with you is bigger than just this moment. I'm not standing here because I'm caught up in one emotional conversation, or because I'm afraid of losing you tonight. What I feel isn't limited to today. When I think about you, I don't just think about what we could be right now. I think about what we could build over time, because anyone can want someone when everything is exciting. The real question is whether you still want them when life becomes ordinary. I want more than beautiful moments. I want the quiet mornings, the difficult conversations, the unexpected problems, the celebrations, the setbacks, and all the ordinary days in between. I want something that doesn't disappear when the excitement fades. I don't want a relationship that exists only when everything is perfect. I want something strong enough to survive reality. That means I don't just want to know the version of you that smiles and says, everything is okay. I want to understand you when you're tired, when you're frustrated, when you don't know what to say, and when life isn't giving you what you hoped for. I want to know your dreams, but I also want to understand your fears. I want to celebrate your victories, but I also want to be someone who doesn't disappear when you're struggling, and I want you to have that same freedom with me. I don't want you to feel like you have to perform for my love. You shouldn't have to be perfect to deserve care. You shouldn't have to hide your imperfections because you're afraid they'll change how I see you. I want something honest enough to handle the truth, because eventually, Every relationship reaches the point where fantasy ends and real life begins. That's where you discover whether the connection was built on excitement or something deeper. I want deeper. I want trust that doesn't need constant reassurance. I want communication that doesn't collapse when we disagree. I want commitment that isn't based on convenience. I want two people who can have difficult conversations without turning every disagreement into a reason to walk away. And I know that requires work. Real love isn't just something you feel. It's something you build. You build it through thousands of small decisions. You choose patience when anger would be easier. You choose honesty when hiding would be more comfortable. You choose forgiveness when resentment feels justified. You choose to listen when your ego wants to speak. You choose to keep learning each other instead of assuming you already know everything. That's what I mean when I say I want something bigger. I don't mean perfect. I mean meaningful. I want us to become better because we met each other. I want us to encourage each other's dreams instead of becoming obstacles to them. I want to see you become everything you're capable of becoming, even if that means challenging me to grow along the way. I don't want to possess your future. I want to be part of it. There's a difference. I want to build alongside you, not control you. I want us to have individual goals and shared dreams. I want there to be room for both of us to grow without either person feeling smaller. And if one day we look back at this moment, I don't want it to be remembered as the night when someone made a desperate promise because they were afraid of losing someone. I want it to be remembered as the moment when two people finally decided to be honest about what they wanted. Maybe the future won't look exactly the way we imagine it today. Life rarely follows a perfect blueprint. Things change. People grow. Circumstances shift. But that's okay. I don't need to know every detail of the future to know what I want to build toward. I want a future where love isn't just something we talk about. It's something we demonstrate, where trust isn't demanded. It's earned, where commitment isn't a cage, it's a choice, and where being together doesn't stop either of us from becoming who we're meant to be. So no, I'm not asking you to decide everything tonight. I'm asking you to see beyond this moment, see the possibility beyond the fear, see the future beyond the uncertainty. See what could happen if two people who genuinely care about each other stop running from difficult conversations and start building something real. Because what I want with you isn't simply another beautiful chapter. I want to build the kind of future where, years from now, we look back at this moment and realize it was the beginning of everything we were brave enough to build together. And now, perhaps the hardest thing I have to say is this. If you decide to walk away, I will respect your choice. I may not like it. I may not understand it immediately. It may hurt more than I can explain, but I will respect it. Because loving someone doesn't mean owning their decision. I don't want you to stay because you feel guilty. I don't want you to stay because you feel pressured by everything I've just told you. And I don't want you to choose me simply because you're afraid of hurting me. If you choose me, I want it to be because your heart genuinely wants to. That's important to me. I've spent so much time being afraid of losing you that I almost forgot something essential. You are your own person. You have your own dreams, your own fears, your own experiences, and your own right to decide what kind of future you want. I can't demand a place in that future. I can only tell you why I hope there is one for me. And that's what I've been trying to do throughout this conversation. I've told you what I've been afraid to say. I've admitted where I was wrong. I've explained what you mean to me. I've told you that my feelings are deeper than I ever allowed myself to admit. And I've told you that I want something bigger than this one moment, but none of that gives me the right to decide for you. Your heart belongs to you. If you need time, take it. If you need space, I'll give it. If you need answers, I'll try to give them honestly. And if, after everything you've heard, you still decide that walking away is what you need, then I will have to find the strength to accept that. It won't mean I didn't love you. It won't mean you weren't important. It won't mean everything we shared was meaningless. Sometimes, two people can care deeply about each other and still reach a point where one of them chooses a different direction. That's painful, but it's real. And I'd rather face a painful truth than live inside a beautiful illusion. Because real love has to include freedom. If I truly care about you, then I have to care about your happiness, even if your happiness eventually takes you somewhere I can't follow. That's not weakness, that's respect. And I don't want this conversation to become a negotiation where I list everything I've done and ask you to repay me with your decision. Love isn't a transaction. I don't love you because I expect something in return. I love you because somewhere along the way, you became deeply meaningful to me. And that feeling doesn't disappear simply because I don't control the outcome. But I also want you to know something else. If you walk away, I won't chase you endlessly trying to force you to reconsider. I won't turn my pain into a reason for you to feel guilty. I won't make you responsible for fixing my emotions. I'll carry my own heart. I'll learn from this. I'll keep growing. And I'll be grateful that at least once I had the courage to tell someone exactly what they meant to me, because the alternative would have been far worse. The alternative would have been silence. Years from now, I could have looked back and wondered what might have happened if I had simply told you the truth. I don't want that regret. So whatever you decide, at least you will know. You'll know that someone cared enough to become vulnerable. You'll know that the silence wasn't because you didn't matter. You'll know that behind every hesitation was a person struggling to find the courage to say what was already living inside his heart. And maybe that's enough. Maybe love isn't always about getting the ending we imagined. Sometimes it's about having the courage to speak honestly, and then having the strength to respect the other person's freedom. So if you choose to stay, I'll be grateful, and I'll work every day to prove that your choice was worth trusting. And if you choose to leave, I'll hurt, I'll learn, and eventually I'll heal. But I will never regret telling you the truth, because you deserve to hear it. If you walk away, I'll let you go with love. Not because you meant little to me, but because you meant enough for me to respect your freedom, even when it breaks my heart. So after everything I've told you, I think it's time to stop circling around the truth and simply say what I've really been trying to say. I love you. There it is. 3 simple words, but behind them is everything I've struggled to explain. Every hesitation, every quiet moment, every conversation I replayed in my mind. Every time I wanted to tell you what you meant to me, and then convince myself that maybe I should wait. But I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to hide behind complicated explanations when the truth itself is actually very simple. You matter to me more than I expected, more than I planned, and probably more than I ever knew how to express. I didn't fall in love with some perfect version of you. I fell for the person you actually are. The person with strengths and weaknesses, dreams and doubts, confidence and uncertainty. I don't need you to become someone else for me to care about you. I want to know you as you are, and I want you to know me the same way. Not the version of me that always has the right answer. Not the version that pretends everything is under control. Not the version that hides behind confidence when something actually scares me. I want you to know the person standing here right now. The person who is finally willing to admit that you have become incredibly important to him. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what love is supposed to look like, and I've realized that maybe we've made it too complicated. Love isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's simply remembering the little things. Sometimes it's wanting to hear how someone's day went. Sometimes it's worrying about them when they're struggling. Sometimes it's being proud of them, even when they don't realize how far they've come. Sometimes it's choosing patience when frustration would be easier. Sometimes it's staying honest when silence would be more comfortable. That's what I've been feeling, and I don't want to reduce it to a temporary emotion. I want to treat it like something meaningful. Because if you're going to tell someone you love them, those words should carry responsibility. They should mean that you're willing to listen, willing to grow, willing to apologize, willing to communicate, willing to show up, willing to accept that love isn't about controlling another person's life. It's about creating a relationship where both people can be free, respected, and valued. That's what I want. I don't want to promise you a perfect life. I can't. Nobody can. There will be difficult days. There will be misunderstandings. There will be moments when we don't know what to do next. But I want to promise you something more realistic. If you choose to build something with me, I will choose honesty. I will choose communication. I will choose growth. And when I make mistakes, I will try to learn instead of pretending they didn't happen, because I don't want to simply have your love. I want to deserve it. And maybe that's the most important thing I've been trying to say all along. I'm not asking you to become responsible for my happiness. I'm not asking you to fix me. I'm not asking you to sacrifice who you are so that I can have the relationship I imagined. I'm asking for the possibility of building something where both of us become stronger, wiser, and happier because we chose to walk through life together. And if your answer isn't what I hope for, I will respect it. But at least you will never have to wonder anymore. You will know. You will know that when I looked at you and said you mattered, I meant it. When I said my feelings were deeper than I admitted, I meant it. When I said I could see a future worth building, I meant it. And when I say that I love you, I am not saying it because I'm afraid of losing you. I'm saying it because I've finally become brave enough to stop hiding the truth. So here is what I've really been trying to say. You became someone I don't want to take for granted. You became someone whose happiness matters to me. You became someone who changed the way I see my future. And somewhere between all the words I was afraid to speak, I realized something I can no longer deny. I love you. Not because I need you to complete my life, but because having you in it makes me want to build a life worthy of sharing with you. And now, before you decide what happens next, I want to ask you for one final thing. Don't look only at my words. Look at my heart. Look at everything behind these words. The moments I stayed silent, the moments I was afraid, the mistakes I made, the ways I've tried to grow, and the feelings I've struggled to explain. Words are easy to hear in a moment like this, but the heart behind them is harder to see. So I don't expect you to make your decision simply because I gave you an emotional speech. I don't expect a few powerful sentences to erase every doubt you've ever had. And I don't expect you to forget anything that made you question me. Instead, I want you to look at the whole picture. Look at who I have been, but also look at who I'm trying to become. Look at my mistakes, but don't ignore the lessons I've learned from them. Look at my weaknesses, but notice whether I'm willing to work on them. Look at my promises, but more importantly, watch whether my actions eventually support those promises. Because that's where you'll find the real answer. Anyone can say, I love you. But love becomes meaningful when someone chooses honesty after lying would be easier. It becomes meaningful when someone chooses patience during an argument. It becomes meaningful when someone listens instead of simply waiting for their turn to speak. It becomes meaningful when someone takes responsibility without being forced. It becomes meaningful when someone continues showing up after the excitement has disappeared. That's the kind of love I want you to judge me by. Not this one conversation, not one emotional night, not one promise. Judge me by the pattern I create after this moment. If I tell you that you matter, let my actions make you feel valued. If I tell you that I respect you, let my behavior prove it when we disagree. If I tell you that I want a future with you, let my consistency show you that I'm willing to build toward it. And if I fail, I want you to be able to tell me. I don't want a relationship where one person is constantly afraid to speak because the other person can't handle criticism. I want something strong enough for honesty, something where we can say, this hurt me, without turning it into war, something where we can admit, I was wrong, without feeling defeated. Something where we can say, I need you, without feeling weak. Because real strength isn't pretending you don't need anyone. Real strength is knowing what matters and having the courage to protect it without trying to control it. And that's what I'm trying to do right now. I'm not trying to control your decision. I'm trying to make sure you have the truth before you make it. If you choose me, I want you to choose me with open eyes. Now my imperfections, now my fears. Know that I will make mistakes. Now that there will be days when I don't have all the answers, but also know that I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to listen, I'm willing to grow, I'm willing to work, and I'm willing to prove that what I feel isn't just something that sounds beautiful when spoken aloud. It's something I'm prepared to live. Maybe that's the greatest difference between words and love. Words can exist for a few seconds. Love has to survive days, months, years, and reality. So don't decide based on the emotion of this moment alone. Give time the opportunity to reveal what words cannot. Watch what happens when life becomes difficult. Watch how I treat you when I'm frustrated. Watch whether I keep my promises when nobody is watching. Watch whether I continue choosing honesty when silence would be easier. That's when you'll know. And if, after seeing everything, your heart still tells you that I'm not the person you want beside you, I'll respect that. It will hurt, but I'll respect it. Because loving you means respecting your freedom to choose. But if your heart tells you that there is something here worth protecting, something worth rebuilding, something worth giving another chance, then I hope you'll remember this moment. Not as a desperate request, but as the moment when I finally stopped hiding. I have told you everything I was afraid to tell you. Now the decision is yours. And whatever you decide, I want you to remember one thing. Don't judge the love I feel by the words I speak tonight. Judge it by the life, the actions, and the truth I am willing to live from this moment forward.